What if Roger Waters was right? Not partly right, not right in a fit of temper, but simply and straightforwardly correct when he said, in the remark that has been quoted back at him 1,000 times, that David Gilmour's lyrics are third-rate and always will be. We are so used to treating that line as a scandal, as evidence of Waters' famous cruelty, that almost nobody stops to ask the obvious question, which is whether the accusation is actually true. And I want to begin this by conceding it, fully and without hedging. Because the concession is where the interesting thing starts. Waters is not lying. He is not even exaggerating very much. And the reason it does not matter, the reason the greatest music this band ever made survives the accusation entirely untouched, is that Waters was measuring another man's work with an instrument built to measure his own, and in doing so, he accidentally revealed the deepest and least understood conflict inside Pink Floyd, which was never really about money or credit or control at all. It was about where the meaning of music lives. Start with the concession and let it hurt. If you go looking for the evidence that Gilmour is a great lyricist, you will not find much. And the strongest evidence against him is not anything Waters ever said. It is what Gilmour himself did. When the band continued without Waters, and Gilmour had to fill an album with words, he did not sit down and write them alone. He brought in outside writers to help him. And on the following record, and on his solo work after that, the words came increasingly from his wife, the novelist Polly Sampson, who has been his principal writing partner for decades, and whose name sits beside his in the credits of some of his most admired later songs. This is not a scandal, and Gilmour has never hidden it. But it is an admission, made in practice rather than in interviews, that language was not his instrument. A man who could write the words did not need to marry a novelist to get them. And the criticism most often made of the post-Waters albums, even by people who love them, is precisely the one Waters would make. That they sound magnificent and say comparatively little. That the surfaces are gorgeous and the substructure is thin. So let us grant the whole charge. As a writer of words, Gilmour is not in Waters' league, and it is not close. And Gilmour appears to have known it long before Waters said it out loud. And now watch the accusation collapse anyway. Because Waters was doing something that looks like criticism and is actually a category error. He was judging a musician by the single measure on which he himself is supreme, and on which the other man never entered the competition. It is the same move as a novelist dismissing a painter for having a thin vocabulary. Waters is one of the great lyricists in the history of popular music, a writer of rare political fury and psychological precision, a man for whom a song is an argument, a statement, a case being made. His entire artistic identity rests on the conviction that music carries meaning the way a sentence carries meaning, that the song is a vehicle and the words are the cargo. Of course, he thinks the cargo is what matters. He has spent his life loading it. But Gilmour was never trying to carry that cargo. Gilmour's entire gift, the thing he does better than almost anyone who has ever picked up the instrument, is the production of meaning that cannot be put into words at all. And judging that by the quality of his lyrics is like judging a swimmer by his handwriting. Here is the proof, and it is not an argument. It is an experiment you have already run on yourself. Think of the single most devastating moment in the entire Pink Floyd catalog. The passage that has reduced more people to silence than anything else the band recorded. For an enormous number of listeners, it is the closing solo of Comfortably Numb. Now notice what is in it. There are no words in it. Not one. It is pure tone, pure phrasing, pure bending of a string. And it says something that no lyric on that album, and Waters wrote all of them, manages to say. Think of the 4 notes that open "Shine on You, Crazy Diamond." 4 notes that arrive before anyone has sung a syllable and that already contain the entire grief of the song, so that by the time the words about the crazy diamond appear, they are almost redundant, a caption pinned to a feeling that had already been fully delivered. Think of the fact that millions of people who do not speak a word of English have wept at these records. They are not weeping at the argument. They cannot follow the argument. They are weeping at the thing Gilmour does. And that thing survives translation because it never passed through language in the first place. This is the real quarrel. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it in any part of their history. 2 men spent 30 years in the same band, holding incompatible theories of where the meaning of music is located. For Waters, meaning is sayable. It lives in the words, in the concept, in the statement. And the music is the delivery system. Which is why his albums are structured like arguments and why he eventually wanted an opera, a story, a thesis, a wall you could interpret. For Gilmour, meaning is exactly the thing that cannot be said. The residue that is left over when language has failed, and music exists precisely to carry what no sentence can. These are not 2 levels of talent. They are 2 philosophies. And they are genuinely opposed. And the extraordinary fact is that for one glorious decade, the band was made of both of them at once. Which is a large part of why nothing has ever sounded quite like it since. And the place where you can hear the 2 philosophies collide in a single song is, appropriately, the peak of the album, about a man sealing himself off from the world. Incomfortably numb, Waters wrote the verses, and Gilmour wrote and sang the choruses and played the solos. And the structure of that song is the argument itself, staged. The verses are cold, clinical, constricted, a precise verbal description of what it feels like to be numb. The meaning fully stated, the case made in language. And it is superb writing. And then the wordless flood comes in over the top and does to you, in your chest, what the verses had been describing to your mind. The lyric tells you about the numbness. The solo removes it. That is the whole difference between these 2 men in 4 minutes. And here is the part that should stop Waters cold. His masterpiece needed the other thing. The greatest moment on the greatest album of his career belongs to the man whose lyrics he called third-rate, and it belongs to him precisely at the point where words had done everything they could do, and something else had to take over. Which brings us to the sting in the tail, the reason I think the remark is more revealing about the man who made it than about the man it was aimed at. To call another musician's lyrics third-rate as though that settled the question is to confess that you cannot conceive of value arriving in any form except a statement. It is the judgment of someone for whom the unsayable is not a category, for whom, if a thing cannot be put into a line, it has not been said at all. And that is a limitation, a real one, and it is arguably the limitation that has shaped the second half of Waters' career, in which the arguments have grown louder and more explicit, and the mystery has drained out. Meanwhile, the man he dismissed went on producing, with no help from language whatsoever, the passages that make grown adults pull the car over. Waters was right about the lyrics. He was wrong about what lyrics are for, and about what a band like this one was ever doing. And the insult is a small monument to the one thing he could not hear. So let us give both of them their due, honestly, because the honest version is better than either side of the fan war. Waters is correct that a Pink Floyd made only of Gilmour would be beautiful and would have less to say. And the later albums make that case for him more effectively than he ever could. And Gilmour is correct, by demonstration rather than by argument, that a Pink Floyd made only of Waters would be right about everything and would move nobody. Fokadidastki, because the words were only ever half of it, and the half that made you cry was never written down. The tragedy of this band is not that one of them was a genius and the other was overrated. It is that each of them held one half of an answer, and neither could hear the other half as anything but a deficiency. And so the most quoted insult in their history is really the sound of two men who needed each other completely, standing on opposite sides of a question that has no winner. If you want the rest of this story, the full anatomy of the war between the man of words and the man of tone, and what it cost them both, it runs all the way through my Pink Floyd dossier, and the link is waiting in the pinned comment. But the heart of this one is a single concession that turns into a reversal. So I will leave you with the question the insult accidentally asked. If the most unforgettable thing this band ever recorded contains no words at all, then what exactly do we mean when we say that a song has something to say? Where art does not console, it autopsies.